Welcome to the Telos Care Podcast, where faith meets formation. Thanks for joining us today as we have conversations around biblical counseling and how to bring hope and healing to a hurting world.
I want to talk to you a little bit today about restoration and healing, because part of going through trauma in life and part of going through a struggle with addiction or any type of abuse or even incarceration, I mean, we all come from different backgrounds in a group like this, but part of what must happen is that there must be a restoration and a healing take place. God's design for your life and my life is not to be broken, tore apart, messed up, screwed up for the rest of our lives. There is a promise of restoration. There is hope and healing. And this is true whether you're a believer or whether you're not. You can be here and be as agnostic as you would like to be. These principles work universally. I believe that completely. I am convinced of that. And so what I do in this particular class is we'll talk from a faith foundation, but you'll see shortly how I'll bring some clinical science to it. And so part of this is education. And why is that important? Because it helps us to be aware. It helps us to process. It helps us to think. And that is one of the keys, if maybe not the essential key, to getting set free from the things that hold you back, that make you feel like you're in bondage. And so my desire is to set the captives free. That truly is what I'm all about. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, guys. So I'm going to give you a verse. I'm going to start with a verse. If you have a Bible, turn with me because this is worth looking at. I'm going to take you to Galatians, the book of Galatians, chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. And I believe that this is a foundational verse for our understanding of a principle, or one of the great key principles in restoration and healing. So Galatians chapter 6, verse 1, if you're there, say amen. Great. Verse 1, the Apostle Paul writing this epistle, this letter, he says, if a man is overtaken in any trespass. Some translations say if a man is overtaken in a fault. If a man falls, if a man is broken, if a man gets in trouble, you who are spiritual, restore such a one. How do we do it? In the spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted, bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. The principle pretty straightforward, right? If a brother gets in trouble, if he falls, if he gets hurt, if he relapses, if he train wrecks his life, you who are spiritual, restore this brother. I mean, it's the call and it's the desire of the heart of God. It's the mission of the church to restore those who are fallen, not to point fingers, not to accuse, not to blame, not to just, tell them how, screwed up they have been with their life and have made all these bad choices. And yes, that may be true, but the admonition, the commission, the commandment is to restore that brother in the spirit of meekness, gentleness, kindness, and love. So there's no judgment in this verse, right? The word restore is an interesting word here. It's a Greek word that has the idea of literally like resetting a bone, like you would restore a bone. It literally has a medical connotation to it when you look it up. What does that mean? Well, if I break my leg, and God help me, I don't want to break my leg today, but if I were to break my leg, I'd probably need some help, right, to restore it. I mean, somebody would have to reset that bone, and then we cast it. And I like to think I'm relatively tough, but I don't know if I could actually reset my bone by myself. That may be a bridge too far for this guy, okay? It would hurt. And so what happens? Somebody resets that bone, they cast it, and you start healing, you start restoring, but it doesn't end there, right? Over time, that cast has got to come off, and it still hurts. And then what happens? Physical therapy. I got to start working that leg out, right? That doesn't feel good. And over time, if the damage is not too severe, I can get back to the mobility that I had before, and in some cases, even better. And so, in that process, I need some help. I might need some therapy, might even need a Tylenol, right? But I can get back to a place where I was before. And if all things go well and I really give myself to the treatment and the process, I can even be better than before. And that's the idea of restoration. And that's the idea of what can transform in your life and take place in your life. So the mission, this place, is just about resetting that bone. It's just about helping you get reset, and then you got to do the work, and the great component of this program is it allows you to pause. This is your cast, and you're allowed to heal and get stronger here. But then to get better, you're going to have to do the work. And if you put the work in this program, you will get out of it what you put into it. I promise you. Is it perfect? Far from it. But if you put the work in, you will get better. You will get stronger. Does that make sense? You see the analogy? Athletes will tell you that when they're injured on the field, that the recovery is actually more painful than the injury was, because you've got to give yourself to that recovery process. And sometimes, you got to push yourself. You got to lean into that recovery. And the more you lean in and the more you're committed to that recovery process and accepting of the treatment, the stronger you're going to be. And the faster you will recover and the quicker you will return to the field or to the court. They tell me, I don't know if the statistic is right, but they say like 90, I think it is, of the NFL players, they play hurt. They have injuries. They're in pain. They got things wrapped up and they're on meds and all kinds of things. And what we've found in life is, if life is painful, you got to play hurt sometimes, right? You got to play hurt. You can't just give up and not address it. Or I guess you could, but that's not the quality of life that any of us want. You're designed to want to do better. It's just innate within human nature. We're designed. That's why we don't live in caves anymore, right? We want to build, and we want to do, and we want to go places and do things, and we want to accomplish things. It's like in your DNA. And so there's nothing more tragic, in my opinion, than to see a man who has just given up on that, given up on the dream, given up on ambition, given up on wanting to achieve and be more. I'm of the opinion that you come into this life with this sense of, I'm here for some purpose. There is some meaning to life. And to give up on that is the greatest of all losses. So I would ask you the question, who are you? Why are you here? What is it that you have yet to do in this life? Because your life is valuable. It has a purpose. It is of significance. I mean, think about this. Your DNA is such that it separates you from everybody on this planet. 7 billion plus people. And guess what? We can identify you by your fingerprints, by your eye retina, by your DNA, because you are that unique. There has never, ever been anybody like you. And there will never, ever be anybody else like you. You are that unique in creation. And so what does that mean? That means that I'm not an accident. That means you're not a mistake. That means you do have a purpose. So sometimes we get broken and we need to be reset. So this idea of restore, the actual word, the English word restore, means to bring back to a former state, to return to a former position, to heal, to cure, renew, reestablish after interruption, to return something lost or stolen or taken to the owner. I like that idea of to renew or to reestablish after interruption. Addiction, incarceration, homelessness, it's just an interruption. And restoration is about being restored despite that interruption and back to the original state. And the promise is that you can even return to a better state, a stronger state. If you get injured and you go to a doctor and they say, here's what the treatment plan is going to look like for you, you will experience the results based upon the work that you put into it, whether it's physical therapy, whether it's regaining whatever you've lost. If someone has a stroke, for example, sometimes they lose speech, sometimes they lose nerve feeling, things like that. Those things are recovery, and the faster a person gets into recovery, the better the outcome. And the more they put into it, the better the outcome. And the more they accept it, the better the outcome. If I resist, I deny, I push it away, say I'm not going to do that, my outcome is generally not as good. So there's no time frame and there's no magic formula, but whatever the treatment is, you get the most out of it by giving it 100%. You got to put some skin in the game. That's a good way to put it. So, and that typically occurs every day in the grind. Typically, it's not like, okay, I went to church, I walked the aisle, I had cried some tears and had some people pray for me, and that's wonderful. But typically, after that, buddy, you need to do the everyday thing, or that's going to fade. So I'm not after an emotional experience, though there's nothing wrong with an emotional experience. I'm emotional. You are too. I'll take that. It actually feels good to cry, right? It feels good to feel something because we go through life and we get so beat up and we deal with so much pain that we numb ourselves to the pain, right? We stop feeling. And when you numb yourself to the pain and you just white knuckle through life, you can do that, but you start numbing yourself to every other good thing in life too. You can't enjoy the laughter of a child or a friend's company that tells you a good joke or the love of a significant other. When you numb yourself to that level, you can't receive love, you can't give love. In other words, you stop being human. You're just a zombie. You're the walking dead at that point. And I'm sharing this out of experience, my friends. I've dealt with pain, I've dealt with suffering. And the tendency, I believe, especially for men, we climb into a silo, we isolate, we numb ourselves to the pain. We say, I'm just going to put my head down and get through this. And we cease to exist. We cease to live. Time passes, life goes on. But if you don't come out of that zombie state, you generally find yourself trapped and in bondage to something. So what do? We look for ways to numb the pain. We self-medicate because it's really easy, especially when you can go down the street and it's cheaper to buy beer than water. Yeah, not the best way to hydrate yourself, right? Though it, and does it work? Yeah, temporarily. Any self-medication, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, pornography, name your vice, they all work for a little bit. Then they don't work. And when they don't work, the problems tend to multiply times 10. And it creates this vicious cycle. And you wake up and you say, that guy this morning, he was talking about purpose and meaning in life. I don't have any of that. That's not the man that you are. I believe better than that. So this idea of restore is a powerful word. So let me talk to you a little bit about purpose and meaning in life. The two words are not the same. purpose and meaning. Give me some concept or idea. What do you think might be the difference between the words purpose and meaning? Someone says, I need to find meaning in life. Someone says, I need to find purpose in life. What do you think those two ideas convey? Do you find purpose and meaning in your life today? What do you find it in? If you don't have purpose and don't see meaning, how does that make you feel right now? Those are internal processes, right? Those are internal things to think about. Let me give you the textbook definition of meaning and purpose. Meaning refers to how we make sense of life and our roles within it, while purpose relates to the aspirations that motivate our activities. So meaning might be more like, this is, life makes sense to me, or this job makes sense to me because, yeah, I find meaning in it in the sense that there's value. I'm helping others. Maybe you have a job here at the mission and you see that there, wow, I'm not just wasting time, but there's value in what I'm contributing to somebody else. I went and stopped and went out of my way and helped somebody yesterday, and I find meaning in that. And then purpose is more of the concept of, I have this motivation of purpose, and maybe it is of the same, to help others. And it's because I have this purpose that this job works for me, that gives me meaning in my day to day. I can tell you this, that it is vital that we have a sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. We can define it a little bit differently. It shows up a bit unique in all of our lives, something that you gotta have. Or you will just go through life day to day, very discouraging, very empty, very, uh, what's worth it all? I mean, is this as good as it gets? You wind up to that level. So someone said this. Someone said, knowing your purpose gives meaning to your life. That's pretty good. If I know my purpose, if I have an idea of why I am here and what I have to do in this life, if I sense in some degree that there is a call upon my life, then that purpose gives everything meaning. It just makes everything meaningful. I don't know why I'm here today in this class today, but because I'm here, because I have purpose, there's meaning in it. And you start extracting the meaning. And a person that operates in life that is purpose driven, they're generally happier. They're generally less depressed, less anxious, less angry. They generally are more successful, more productive, and they're generally people you want to hang out with. Someone with no purpose who is just getting through the grind of the day typically goes very negative, very dark, and they're typically people that drain you rather than energize you. There's a famous psychologist of years gone by. His name was Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl said this. He said, he who knows the why for his existence will be able to bear almost any how. What do you mean by that? Frankl was a psychiatrist who lived during the time of World War II. He was Jewish and he lived in Austria, and it was during the time of the Nazi invasion. Not a good time to be in Austria and being Jewish, right? So he, his wife, his family, siblings were hauled off into concentration camps. And so Frankel writes about this. He survived the Holocaust, and he writes about his experience. He witnessed the separation of his family because they separated families. Then he hears about the tragic death of his father, his mother, his wife. And during this process, uh, he was just brutalized, right? They virtually humiliated these men. They starved them. The pictures are just awful, of course, but his life story and his account of it is particularly horrifying. And so getting through this, what he discovered and what he learned is that individuals that survived the Holocaust camps, they were not the strongest men. They were not the youngest men. They were not the most intelligent that would survive. He would think he's a medical doctor. He's a psychiatrist. He's looking at this through the lens of science, and he's saying to himself, well, what's the secret of surviving this atrocity? What's the secret of surviving such great suffering? And he realized that it had nothing to do with their DNA, their genetics, their strength, their youth, their whatever. It all boiled down to whether or not a person, a man in this case, had a sense of purpose and meaning. And he said those were the men that survived the Holocaust, the men that had a sense of purpose and meaning in their life. It was the guy that went to his bunk every night and pulls out the picture of his family and hides it away so it doesn't get taken from him. But he says to himself, I'm getting out for them. It's that sense of purpose and meaning that helps us survive. So he said, and rightfully so, he who knows the why, the purpose for his existence, will be able to bear almost any how. It's not that I know the reason, but if I have a sense of purpose and meaning in this, I can deal with the how. I can deal with the pain. I can deal with the difficulties. I can deal with the injustice if I know my purpose and my meaning. And I would say that to you. You can get through almost anything if you have a sense of purpose and meaning. Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great verse, because without a vision, without purpose, without meaning, without seeing an end, we perish. And what does that look like? Many times it looks like we just give up. Don't care. That's also a way of escaping, right? I don't care. I just don't give a rip about that. That has no importance, no value to me. And that I don't care attitude may get you through a day, but it doesn't get you through life. And it doesn't allow you to show up in life as a man of value and integrity and influence to any degree. Because that's really what I've got today. I've got a choice of how will I show up today? Will I engage life? Will I move beyond all of the difficulties that I've gone through, all of the injustice? How will I show up today? So you have a choice on that. That's on you. Show up as a man of purpose, a man with that finds meaning in what he's called to do in this life. So according to psychology, here's the clinical side of this. There are three components of finding meaning in life. One would be to find your purpose, the thing that it is that makes you unique. It's having a future-oriented goal, which gives you direction, and then purpose and coherence go together, and that's the whole idea of meaning. Because I'm doing this, I find meaning in it. And then it leads to significance, that there is a significant reason for me being here. There is a purpose, there is a meaning, and my life is with significance. It's not without significance. I mean, there's probably men in this room today that you have been told, when you were that big, you're a mistake, you're not going to make it, you're not worth anything, you're a loser. All of those types of negative, putting down, just horrific things that a child could be told. Many times those become seeds in your mind. Seeds grow up into something too, right? The trees out here, they were all at one time a little acorn, a little seed. And the seeds that get planted in your mind when you are so big, they grow up into trees. And sometimes those trees can be very unproductive. And you may look at the world that I'm not good. I don't have a purpose. I am a mistake. Everything that my parents or my siblings told told me about myself, I believed I'm stupid, I'm less than, I'm not good enough. And so you believe it and you show up in life like that. And so you don't take the job. You won't even take a compliment. You don't think you're good enough for this or that. And we sabotage things and we gravitate to a culture or a crowd where it's easy to fit in because there's not much expected. And I would say that's not fitting in, that's selling out because you're better than that. You're more than that. You say, I just don't believe in myself. Some days I just feel like garbage. God created you. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You're not garbage. I'm speaking to men of value, men of significance, men of purpose. Yeah, I believe that. And when you start believing that, it changes everything. It changes the way you show up in life. The Bible tells us in Ephesians 2:10 that we are God's workmanship. It's the idea of God's masterpiece. It also is a word that indicates the word workmanship or masterpiece. It has the idea of poetry. You're like God's work of art. You're like this perfect poem that God has written. And words are beautiful. Sometimes we just gloss over certain words in the Bible, but I think they're worthy of consideration. That verse, that simple verse in Ephesians 2:10, it tells me that God has designed my life. He has written my life. I am his workmanship, like an artisan who builds something, makes something, like a potter who takes the clay and forms it and makes it. So God is working in your life. He is forming you. Ultimately, he is conforming you to the image of Christ. And so often in this life, one of our biggest challenges and the biggest battles that we have is in the area of identity. And so if you grew up and you were shamed, not good enough, you're not as smart as they are, you're not as good as they are, don't even try out for that sport because you're not going to make it. Don't even think about talking to that girl. She has nothing to do with you. If that's your mentality and you operate and show up with this thing of shame, that's going to be your experience. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. I'll give you one last thought, and it's about identity and it's about shame. Remember the story in the Bible in Genesis where Adam and Eve, they eat of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, and their eyes are open, right? And they're ashamed. They have, and they go and they hide themselves, right? And they try to cover up themselves. Prior to their eyes being open, they were shameless. They were pretty secure about themselves. They're walking around absolutely uncovered. But when their eyes are opened, they have shame and they're hiding, and God comes looking for them. God's looking for you too. And God asks them a question. God comes looking for them. Where are you? Well, we were hiding because we were naked. And the question that God asked them is, who told you you were naked? Who put that thought of shame in your mind? Who told you you weren't good enough? Who told you you should be ashamed of yourself? Who told you to hide? And I would say to you this, who told you you weren't good enough? Who put that seed in your head? Somebody did. And it's a lie that you're not enough, you're less than, you're not worthy. I don't care what happened to you. I don't care who said what to you. Those are lies. And the good news is those lies can be torn down, broken apart, and you can rebuild truth in your life. And what is the truth? My identity is not one of shame. Who am I? I am a deeply beloved son of God. That's my identity. You say, well, you do not have any idea what I've done, where I've been, what I've been through, what has happened to me. Your past is not your identity. What you have done is not your identity. If you've come to Christ, if you know him, your identity identity is that of a deeply beloved child of God. That's who you are, not what you've done. It's who you are, and it's whose you are. That is the core of this whole idea of restoration and healing.